Let me welcome you this evening. Let me welcome you this evening to this evening's presentation of Mango Tree Dialogues, a forum, as you know, in which we discuss the issues of the day that I consider to be of importance to you, as I'm sure they are to me. This evening, we're going to be going to Jamaica and Jamaican diaspora matters, but largely concentrating on what has been happening in Jamaica, because a great deal of things have been taking place in the country. And I just want to concentrate on two matters, really. And that has to do with the opening of the new parliamentary year, because that in fact took place today. And everybody was out, in all parliamentarians, and I guess their well-wishers were out in their glory, giving support to either side of the political spectrum. It is always a kind of grand occasion, when many people come together and they, for cheering on their respective political sides as they enter into their representatives enter into the parliament to begin the new parliamentary year. So I have a few things to say about that. And then I want to say something about the Anglican Church and its 200th anniversary celebration. That celebration, in fact, ends with a service this Sunday at the cathedral in Spanish Town. And I just want to say a few things about the celebration, and perhaps I say we because I'm an Anglican, born and bred. And, it's the church is very precious to me. And there are a few things that I'd like to perhaps ruminate on. So just those two things that should detain us for this evening. So again, welcome. I'm glad you've tuned into the channel, Mango Tree Dialogues. The mango tree, which is the one behind me, is flowering now. It's blossoming, and the next time when I meet with you, I'll be able to upload another picture that you can have a feel for the productivity that is going on in the mango tree. And I would ask especially those who are listening for the first time, it would be very helpful if you go to the introductory message, which is still up on the channel. The introductory message as to the mango tree dialogues and how it came about, what is the significance of the story behind the mango tree and dialogues. I think it's very interesting when you read it. It's very inspirational, and certainly each time I reflect on that journey and where we are today. So welcome, and not just keep a good thing to yourself, share it with somebody else. If you think that what I have to say is of merit, and you think that somebody else ought to hear it, then just share it, and at least give a like to what you've heard. And that's how we keep the thing going. All right, so welcome again, and let's get into it. All right, so today the Parliament presented the government presented the beginning of the parliamentary year at Gordon House. As I said, everybody was out in their resplendent dresses and hats and all the rest of it. It is a very significant start to the year, because not only does it begin the new year for the Parliament, but it is also a time when the estimates and for the budget for the new year, the new financial year, 2025-2026, is also presented by the finance minister. And that was done a little later in the parliament. The celebration, if you may call it that, started with the presentation of what has been referred to as the throne speech. And this is usually done by the Governor General as the Queen's representative in Jamaica, recognizing the King of England as still the head of state. What a state of affairs. For me to even say that, it grates on my nerves. That so many years on, since independence in 1962, we are still having our head of state residing in the country of our colonial past. And somehow, with all the talk about constitutional reform and all that, which I really don't want to get into because I don't want to be sidetracked from what I'm saying to you with regard to this particular matter here. I want to keep with this. But with all that we have heard, you know, we're still hanging on to the monarch in England as our head of state. And his representative, of course, is the Governor General. And so what we witness today is the continuation of the vestige of a colonial past, which we would do well to banish into the history books. We hope that we can do that soon. The speech this year was given by the Governor General himself because he has been sick. In fact, he has been undergoing spinal surgery or has undergone spinal surgery, and he was not able to make the presentation. So this was done by the Custos of Kingston and also the deputy Governor General, Mr. Stedman Fuller. He made the presentation. And I think he did a very good job. You know, and I say that given what I could say is a colossal boredom of the throne speeches. If there's ever a speech that could be considered, that could be considered boring, the throne speech every year has to rank at the very top. And this is not necessarily a commentary on the person who delivers it. The Governor General, whoever he is, well, it has always been he. We have not had a female and Governor General of Jamaica, and that again is another blot on the whole process. But the Governor General who reads the throne speech, and that's all he does, he reads the speech. He's not delivering a speech. When you deliver a speech, it tends to be born out of your own wrestling with the matter that you're presenting. As a matter of fact, it is not he who wrote the speech, it is the government that writes the speech, and it is given to the Governor General, and he goes here and he reads the speech, sitting on his throne. You know, I recall a good while ago when he was in the parliament, there was a suggestion that the speech should be renamed the People's Speech. And that was very revolutionary at the time when the suggestion was made, but nothing came of it. As a matter of fact, I recall that he was pilloried and by people who thought that, you know, the speech should remain the throne speech. But when they call it the people's speech or the throne speech, and it is handed to you, written and handed to you, it becomes a challenge to the person who has to present it and present it in such a way so that people could listen to it without any without being terribly bored. Let me put it that way. But I must congratulate Mr. Fuller, the deputy GG, for making a very good effort. He had a rather elegant style in which he read the speech or presented it, and tried not to make it look as dry or, you know, uninspiring as they usually are. Because what is happening in the speech, you know, friends, is that it's a recitation of the achievements of the government and a suggestion as to what they will hope to do in the new year, and they ramble all over the place, visiting all kinds of different ministries to tell you. So you can sit there for a whole hour, bored with that kind of exercise. And the fact that Mr. Fuller rose to the occasion is one that I think is to be praised. I think the parliamentarians were engaged, and you could see it. They usually clap, some of them usually clap, but there was a kind of a more robust involvement, and you could see that they appreciated the way in which the speech was presented, not just the contents of the speech, which as I said, is written by the government side, but that it was presented in a way that, you know, people could appreciate it. There are a number of things, as I've mentioned one already about the kind of colonial past that the speech celebrates. And apart from the contents, you know, that you would expect, the government is going to praise itself. It's not going to write anything that is not laudatory of its efforts and what it has achieved and all that sort of thing. The speech gave the impression, and probably more than just gave the impression, that there are things that are happening in the country of which the people ought to be informed. And whether the way that they characterize it is correct or not, it's going to be seen in what people feel and what is happening on the ground to say whether there is any veracity to the myriads of things that the government highlighted in that speech today. It is significant to note that the speech was given within the context of the upcoming general elections. And it's just coincidental, really, because I mean, this thing happens every year where the speech is presented are just around this time, the starting of the parliamentary year, or what you could say the budget year. But it so happens that this year, as I said, coincidental, is going to be the general elections. The general elections have to be held by September of this year. That is when they are constitutionally due. The government can go over, decide for another 3 months beyond that if there's a national emergency causing elections not to be held. But I can't recall that ever happening in the Jamaican context. I can't recall that. Usually we have the elections way before the constitutionally due time. As a matter of fact, there is some talk that it could be in May or June of this year. I doubt it will go down to the wire to September. But whatever happens between now and September, the general elections, the new parliamentary elections, in which the prime minister and everybody will be determined, will be called. So the speech was given within the context of that this year. But most importantly, the budget presentation that came a little later on in the day, in the same parliament, was given by the new Minister of Finance, Mrs. Fable Williams. And of course, people listened, I'm sure, to find out what was going to be the figure that the government would craft to fulfill its commitments during the 2025-26 budget financial year. Of course, it was just a presentation of the estimates and expenditures, you know, of what the government hopes to do. So not a great deal of flesh was put on any bone of policy. But that was nonetheless the figure that was crafted. 1.3 trillion Jamaican dollars. Important to stress the Jamaican because we don't want people to think that we're wallowing in US money. So $1.3 trillion in Jamaica, that's a whole lot of money. And that's a big deal. And so the different ministries that monies will be allocated to, the Ministry of Finance, of course, had the biggest, you know, drought, if you put it that way, on the budget. And then there was the Ministry of Health and Education also coming up on top in terms of the amount of money to be spent during the year. We will see starting in March when the budget presentations are made. The first presentation will be made by the minister. She will now spell out the income, the revenues, how the revenue will be raised and the expenditures that will be done. And this is when now you get into the weeds of understanding precisely what the government's intention will be going into the new election year. So what you heard today was just a kind of firing, first shot fired. But the real thing is to come when the budget is read and then the opposition responds and so on. So the country will get a fair idea of what will be done. So we're gonna hold, of course, we have no choice, but we just have to sit and wait until that time comes and these things are presented. But I'd just like to say from here that even before that time comes, that like all well-thinking Jamaicans, we hope that there will not be, and it's very tempting. So you can only live in hope, really, because it's very tempting especially on the government side, to present a budget in which there is going to be a lot of spending on goodies in order to win and influence the elections. And frankly, that would be a travesty, because I think the country has done very well in terms of what it has been able to bring the economy to a point where we're in a very strong position. And we are poised now for the elusive growth that has, eluded us over the growth that has eluded us over the years. We have not had any meaningful, significant growth in the economy. And I'm old enough to say that. All my years, we hear about these budgets being presented and all hoorays about what is to be done, and but you never see promise becoming fulfillment. And we want to urge, at least Mango Tree Dialogues would want to urge the government to be very careful not to go out on the stumps promising a new heaven and a new earth. Because Jamaicans are not fools. One of the good things about social media and the internet is that it is educating people day by day, and they're becoming more feisty in a good way, not taking any foolishness from politicians. Lies, those who step out there to tell lies, and those who would want to bend the truth to fit into their own narrative or to offer opinion as fact. People are going to be on the lookout for you. I noticed that a certain, proportioned gentleman, let me put it that way, has stepped into the fray and is announcing that he's no longer visiting in the pavilion, but that he's going down to bat, so to speak. And he has made a number of statements already with regard to what he sees as the economy and the shambles that it is in, and what is not happening and all that sort of thing. And I would say to that gentleman, and you know that I'm talking the former Prime Minister, Mr. P.J. Patterson. He came out over the weekend and declared that he is going to be out there. I would like to say to him, because I know him to be a gentleman in so many ways, in the worst years of the politics, when violence was tearing the country apart, he was a calming voice. He's not a man that is given to any cantankerous type of thing. He's a consensus builder, and he brings people around him. Some people will argue that that is part of his failing. But one thing you can know about PJ, as he's affectionately called by the populace, is that he's somebody who doesn't provoke discontent. He's a consensus builder. He brings people around issues and so on. And that's who he is, and that is his character. So I found it very terrifying. It came to my mind, but disconcerting, let me put it that way, that he should declare that he's going to come off the fence as an elder statesman who is still respected in many respects. I mean, the 18 and a half years and the 14 years, the longest serving prime minister consistently, the prime minister who has won more time in power than any other. And, we can chalk it up to different reasons. For example, the unpopularity of the leader of the opposition then, Mr. Ebert Siaga, to which I will not get. But we can chalk it up to many issues. That's why he became the winningest, if I should coin a term, prime minister in the history of the country. And they had a lot of opportunity to have done resoundingly well. Because when all the other Caribbean countries were growing, not spectacularly, but at least growing, we were registering negative growth. We had inflation at the highest, interest rates at the highest, the collapse of the financial sector in the 90s. And then FinSAC and all the emotional trauma surrounding that. The roads were in a dilapidated condition, yes. They did a great deal of work on highways. I remember under Mr. Kingsley Thomas, who I see is still pretty active, and I'm very happy for that. He's engaged and still in with it. He was the man who was the brains behind the highway concepts and the infrastructure concept of the Patterson administration. And there are a number of projects that you can see, certainly the highways, that are attributed to his work. And hail Kingsley, for doing that. So there were things that were done, but by and large, the country descended into the economic abyss with the collapse of the financial sector. And we were not able to pay our bills. Whenever we went abroad and we go to the Paris Club, people would say the beggars again, the beggars from Jamaica. The IMF had us by the scruff of the neck, and we couldn't turn without their dictates. So just saying that, as I said, I don't want to get too far into that, but just to say to Mr. Patterson, so I used to have conversations, at Jamaica House. We always had time to argue. As you know, I've been writing these articles for the national paper for the longest while, and for almost 50 years now. And there were times when he and I would meet at Jamaica House, and we would talk about things and policies and certain things that I might have written, or and he always had time for me, and I'm really grateful to him for allowing me those times and those discussions. And he's somebody I grew to respect on a personal level. And I would hate to know that he steps back into the fray when you should be an elder statesman. I said, please, think again. Because I don't think coming back in, especially at this time, is going to redound to your benefit. Continue to enjoy your retirement. You've been doing very well. You've been blessed with good health. Don't spoil a good thing. That's what I said to you. With all respect and with all love. All right. So then, there is one aspect of the presentation that I'd like to make a brief commentary on, and that is the determination of Jamaica's final court of appeal, what we call the final appellate jurisdiction for our country. And in the presentation, it was made known that this will be considered in this financial year. So we think then by September into March, if the present government continues through and wins the election, then I can see that happening by March is when the financial year will end, March 2026. So we will see, what will come of that. But there might be a way in which the elections that are coming up, because the Prime Minister has said that he wants to, Prime Minister and Dr. Andrew Holness has said that he wants to have the determination of our final court to be done by a referendum. In other words, let the people decide it. But the PNP, the People's National Party, they seem very gung-ho on wanting the Caribbean Court of Justice to be the final court. And they have withdrawn themselves from any participation in the constitutional reform meetings that have been taking place. I think they have missed 3 so far, which I think is abysmal. Because I don't know where they think that it is their voice alone that should carry the swing in terms of where the jurisdiction is, ought to be. There are 3 options. The Caribbean Court of Justice is just one. A second option is that there are people who would want to remain with the Privy Council. They still want our appellate jurisdiction to remain in Britain. And thirdly, and the one that I support, is that we can bring our jurisdiction right home here to Jamaica and have the Supreme Court, our Supreme Court, to be the final arbiter of justice. And that's how I see it. If you're going to, I think most people are of the view that we have to move from Britain. We have to what they call repatriate our sovereignty. And when we do it with the king and we give King Charles the boot, and the old vestige of colonialism the boot, then we must also give the Privy Council the boot. And but it doesn't mean that having given them the, walked away from them or gotten rid of them, that we should step off on what I have been describing as a halfway house in Trinidad or Barbados. Bring the thing home. If you're moving from England, come straight to Jamaica. Don't catch off in Barbados or Trinidad. That's nonsense. And why do I say this? Not the expense. You can never, the ordinary Jamaican will never get justice in England to his matter that has to be attended to, because it is too expensive. That is why most don't even think about appealing anything. They just go along with what happens here, because they know that is if they even know about that they have the right of appeal and what it's all about. But those who are well-heeled and who have a lot of money, they can deal with it very easily. And they're the ones who appeal, those who can spend money, hire lawyers in London or hire people from here and they can fly into London. You have to stay at hotels, you have to, and England doesn't even allow visas. So you're gonna beg for a visa in order for you to go there and have your final matter adjudicated. What kind of nonsense is that? So we can't get rid of them quick enough. But when you come to if you're gonna go with the Caribbean Court of Justice and you come to Trinidad, or you come to Barbados, a little less expense. But consider that you have to go there for the reason. They say, okay, so we're in a digital age, so we can do things digitally. You don't have to really leave your home or whatever, your country. And sometimes the justices of the court of the CCJ, the Caribbean Court of Justice, also come to visit the countries that are participating in it. So ostensibly, they could come here to Jamaica as well, and you can have. But why have that kind of back and forth? And you think to appeal and to have something done in Trinidad or Barbados in terms of the ordinary Jamaican paying for that, you think that's going to be easy? Why put the people through all that pressure? Justice shouldn't be that expensive. It shouldn't be hard for the ordinary person to get justice. In other words, for me, it's a matter of taking a taxi or arranging with a man from St. Elizabeth, to take me into Kingston to the Supreme Court to have my matter dealt with. I shouldn't have to be worried about taking a plane flight or what's going to happen outside of my country. It's time we grow up and realize that justice cannot be served, cannot be well served, where it imposes an inordinate burden on the shoulders of people. And that is a reason more than any other that I say, take it home. Let the man here in Jamaica and the woman here in Jamaica have an opportunity to taste of justice in his own country. But I hear the noise. I hear the wailing. Oh, we're not ready. Oh, the court system is ramshackle. Oh, we're corrupt. We can't trust our own. Well, if it was only for those reasons, we wouldn't exist as a people and survive as a people. There comes a point at which, and we must admit, there has been substantial improvements in the delivery of justice in Jamaica. Only the blind would not see it. A great deal has been done to improve the system. Our judges, think about this, friends. Think about this just for a second. It has been said that 80% and more of the cases that go from Jamaica to the Privy Council, in other words, they were appealed here, and appeal was granted, and it ended up in the Privy Council. Over 80% of them were reaffirmed by the law lords. So we have to be doing something good here in terms of our interpretation of the laws. That's such a high percentage. Enjoy, the benefit of the learned minds of the law lords in London. But I can tell you, I'm brighter than many Jamaicans. So let's get with it, man. And don't twist ourselves into pretzels. So when that referendum is engaged, I'll be out there and encouraging people, vote for Jamaica, man. Forget about it. I know why the PNP is pushing Barbados and the CCJ, because they're the ones who came up with it during the Pattis administration too. And as far as I'm concerned, foisted it upon the people. There was no robust discussion of this in the populace. And I think I'm pretty engaged to have known if there was that discussion. They seem to have been in a hurry to do something, a kind of legacy project, to say that they did that. And we spent how many millions of American dollars that we borrowed, really, frankly, to pay our part. And no, we're not even members of it. In other words, we have not accepted them as being our final jurisdiction. What a shame. So now that we have come so far, let's do the thing and do it right this time around. And let's bring it all the way home to Jamdo. That's how I see it. All right, very quickly then, the Anglican Church is celebrating its 200 years of existence. It's 200th anniversary. And they started off with a service a year ago, and they'll be ending with another service, as I said, this Sunday at the cathedral to terminate, more or less, the year of celebration or observance. The Diocese of Jamaica and Grand Cayman, because Grand Cayman has always been a part of the jurisdiction of the Jamaican Anglican Church. Was founded in 1824 before that, we used to have the Bishop of London, who would have jurisdiction over the church in Jamaica as a colony. So in 1824, when they had the disestablishment of the church, and Archbishop Lipscomb at the time was sent to be head of the church here in Jamaica. Since that time in 1824, the Anglican Church has been in existence, and 200 years as the outgoing bishop of the diocese, Reverend Dr. Howard Gregory, reminded us, was in a presentation that you can see on the internet in the AnglicanDiocese.org page, where he talked about it being a significant milestone, and that it is a significant milestone. 200 years of existence, and we're still going. I cannot say that we're still going strong, because there are many things that the church has to come to terms with. I don't know to what extent the year of celebration zeroed in on what I believe to be the difficulties in the church and how much we address the mission of the church and within the context of that mission, that great commission that was given by the Lord Jesus Christ to the church. As a matter of fact, the church now, and let me just back up a little bit and say that the church has had a very important history in terms of the social programs that it has introduced, especially in the area of education and also in health. Many people do not know that the Nuttall Hospital in Kingston was named after a bishop of Jamaica, Enos Nuttall, and that it is an Anglican institution. Very important hospital too. But in education, especially under Bishop Percival Gibson, who was one of the most instrumental personalities in building up the Jamaican church and its foray into social programs, especially in education, to Kingston College, for example, and all these other institutions that he was instrumental in spearheading and setting up and so on. But right through the whole gamut of the society, the presence of the church is to be felt in the many church schools that still bear the church's name and responsibility. So we have done quite a bit in terms of that. But I think the church is at a crossroad. Again, I don't know to what extent the anniversary celebrations reflected on this, but we are at a very critical crossroad in terms of what the essential mission of the church is in today's world. I don't know the extent to which people are feeling the presence of the Anglican Church in Jamaica. And I say it without, trying to vilify or put down any programs that might have been engaged in the past. I have my beef about how the church is organized as an institution. I have had several arguments with my brother, who is a retired priest, former Archdeacon of Montego Bay, Reverend Justin Nemhard. We have had many discussions about the church, and where I see the church and what it is not doing and what it ought to be doing. And one of the main criticisms I've had of the church, and I think Archbishop Gregory, Metropolitan of the West Indies, he did allude in that message about that the pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic, gave the church an opportunity to have a re-examination of how the church does ministry. And that it really did. But to what extent have we been able to seize on the possibilities that have been created by this to really do ministry in a very creative way? I believe the crossroad where we are at is that we are at a point where we, as an institution, that the church has become too caught up in institutionalism and the power plays that go with that. I don't have time this evening to really go into all of that, and hoping that perhaps in time to come, I can have discussions. We really want to have some mandatory dialogues with clergy and others about this. But there's a kind of institutionalism that has created a kind of situation in which the ministry of the church, the simple ministry of the church, is not being done. And that clergymen are more administrators within the context of that institution. And it's not just an Anglican phenomenon. It's a phenomenon that affects all churches, especially mainline churches, where the whole matter of administering the church, interminable meetings, budgets, presiding over budgets, presiding over fundraising efforts, tire clergymen and cause them to be pooped, burnt out in trying to satisfy that to which they were not really called. Because the clergy was never called to do those administrative functions. As a matter of fact, if you read the vows that are taken at your ordination, whether it's ordination of a deacon, priest, or bishop, and I guess it's the same in other churches, there's hardly any mention of administrative work that needs to be done. But there's mention always about teaching the word of God, equipping the saints for ministry. These are the things that you're engaged with: shepherding the flock, attending to the emotional needs of your people. But when you get so bogged down with administration to which you were not called, many clergymen don't know anything about administration. I'm not gonna get some flack for that, but it's the truth. But you were not called to that. Your ordination vows did not call you to that, where you have to be the chief cook and bottle washer at the central presence in the whole thing. That's not what you're called for. And so I don't know to what extent the pandemic allowed us to re-examine those things, and to what extent we think we can be freed of the people of God that have been called and ordained and set aside to help people to become better people for God, serving their Lord. I don't know to what extent that message has gone home. And you can see it in the churches. Yes, we keep up with the few schools that we have. Yes, we keep up with the churches that we have. But if the truth be told, a lot of these churches are not being attended at all. As a matter of fact, a lot of them do not, of the churches in the diocese, don't have any clergy, because there are very few clergy persons going in for training at the United Theological College of the West Indies. And we have to face the facts. The way in which we have been doing ministry, it has to fundamentally change. How many members can you say are Jamaicans, are members of the Anglican Communion here? I think the last figure was over 20,000 in real terms. The point is that it is a declining presence. I'm not gonna say it's a declining church because I don't know of a church declining. But it's a declining presence of the church in the lives of the people. And so I don't want to be too critical. People will tell me that, hey, you're not involved in it, you're not there, so you shouldn't have any chat. All right. If that's the conclusion that some people would want to draw. But one thing I can say is that if we're going to do the work of ministry and we're going to do the work that the Lord called us to do, we cannot continue doing these same things over and over again and expect different results. One famous man called that insanity. And so we have to do better. But I'm gonna rest it there. As I said, I hope that perhaps in the future we can have some discussions with some individuals about the church. And if there's an objection to what I'm saying, I'd be very happy to engage anybody. Just send me your name and we can set it up. I'd be happy to talk about it. But if we're happy after 200 years of presence in this country and we're happy with where we are now, come and prove to me or demonstrate to me. You don't have to prove anything to me, but demonstrate to me, show me what are the contours of that happiness that you feel. Because I'm very concerned that there's more that we ought to be doing. But I wish the church well, of course, of course. We need to remember that the church is one foundation, is Jesus Christ our Lord. It's never us. He's the one on whom we rest and derive strength to face the vicissitudes of the day. He's the one that gets all the praise. So congratulations to the church for having made it after 200 years. That's a significant thing. But there's work to be done. All right, that's gonna do it for me this evening. Again, let me thank you for joining me on this journey. And again, you know, like the program and share it with somebody else. And in whatever you do, wow, good. And have a good night. Bye-bye.